Hi, I'm Grant, this is Dad Crafted, and this is how I finished my workbench with storage, bench dog holes, wheels, and a little bit of color. Alright, let's go. Alright, here we go. So the first thing I wanted to do was add some bench dog holes to the workbench. So here I'm just trying to mark out where I want to put my holes in some semblance of a straight line and with correct spacing and in a pattern that I think makes sense. And that's Whit. He's my helper. Now, I've never owned a workbench with bench dog holes, but I've seen them used in videos, and you can use bench dogs, of course, and some fancy toggle clamps or some other things. I don't own any of those, but I thought it'd be neat to have them. You want to be a woodworker? You gotta look like a woodworker. I understand there's some fancy jig out there that you can attach your drill to, and it'll make sure that you do straight and level holes as you're drilling. I don't own one of those, and I didn't know how to make one, so I just did this all by hand. Of course, several of them came out crooked, but I'm just using this for simple bench dogs, these little Craig things that you see in the pictures here. Even if they're a little crooked, it's good enough for what I'm using it for. Maybe someday it gives me an excuse to make a brand new workbench, right? Next up, storage for underneath the workbench. Here I'm ripping down a few pieces of 2x4. These will act as runners along the inside of the workbench that I can screw into the sides of the workbench on the inside, and then lay some 1x4s across the top to act as a platform to store some of my medium-sized tools like my lathe and my benchtop sander, things that really don't have a permanent place, but now they'll have one. Since all these 1x4s are the same length, I use my miter saw stand that's got a built-in stop block device on the end. That way I can make all my cuts the same exact length and do it really quickly. To attach the 1x4s to the bottom, I just used wood glue. I didn't really see the need to screw these in place since they're pretty much always going to have a bunch of heavy stuff on top of them. In the previous video, the one place that I did use screws was when I attached the legs together that form up the base of the workbench. Now I want to hide all those screw heads, so I'm using dowels to fill the holes with wood glue, and then I'll come back later and saw them off with a pole saw to make them flush. Back to the top of the workbench, and I had some work to do with some files and some sandpaper to just clean up the bench dog holes that I made earlier. Since I used cheap 2x4s to build this thing, there were obviously some cracks, some knots in the wood, and then even my glue up left some seams that were probably a little bit thicker than I wanted. So I used 5-minute epoxy to fill all those nooks and crannies. Well, Still feels kind of sticky, but it's been 12 hours plus, so I'm gonna try to sand it. So this is one we did. It was totally gooped up. Now it's pretty flat. It's got a little haze to it, but once I whitewash this top, it's gonna look cool anyway. And now it's not a gouge.
Sanding.
Alright, time to add some color. I knew all along that I didn't want this thing to look like the average run-of-the-mill workbench. I knew it had to have some color. I'm a big fan of green. Green kind of breeds creativity, I've heard, so that's what I decided to go with. And the main thing here is I really wanted a distinctive look for my workbench so that if anybody saw one of my videos, they would know, yeah, that's the dad dude that wears the flannel shirts. That said, I still definitely wanted this to have a wood look, so I'm using Minwax Tintable Stain, and I'm using the forest green color. For the top, I chose to go with a Minwax Antique White stain. Again, I still wanted it to have the wood look, but not just a regular 2x4 pine color. I thought the antique white would give it a nice whitewash and provide a nice backdrop for videos and some beauty pics of my finished work. I should note, I ended up doing 3 coats of this, and it gets pretty thick by the 3rd coat, so you don't really have to let it sit very long. Put it on, wipe it off with a towel pretty much immediately. And then for final finishing, I used Minwax Semi-Gloss Polyurethane. Using this stuff, I typically do just 2 coats without any sanding in between, but after the 2nd coat I'll come back over with a light sandpaper, typically a 320, just really light sanding, wipe it all off with a microfiber damp towel, and then come back and do 1 more coat of the poly. Now to add some wheels. The intention of this workbench all along was it would probably be in the center of my shop the vast majority of the time, but I definitely wanted to make this thing mobile. And really for 2 reasons. One, if I ever just want to get it out of the way, or if winter rolls and my wife wants to put the car in the garage, I can quickly just move the thing out of the way. Second reason, if I ever decide to sell my house and move and get a new shop, this workbench is coming with me. Now, these wheels are great because they allow the workbench to sit flush on the ground when you don't want to move it, and when you do need to move it, you just stomp the pedals down and it lifts the bench off the ground so that the wheels can roll and you can move it wherever you want to. I will have a link for these down in the description. Really, I can't recommend these things enough, and you'll see the demo here in a sec. Time for the wheel demo. Might be hard to tell, but I'm really not using much pressure to push down with my foot to get this thing to lift off the ground. And then, once this thing rolls, this is about a 300-pound workbench, and these things make it roll around like nothing. Then just use your toe to flip the pedals back up, you're back on level ground, and it's solid, not moving anywhere.
Okay, hold on!
thank you guys so much for watching. If you like the video here, please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I thought about actually cleaning this thing off before I shot this final outro video, but you know what? It's a workbench. It's been done for a while. I've just been a little delayed in getting this video made, but I use the heck out of this thing. I love this workbench. I use it all the time. It's right in the middle of my shop. It is mobile, but probably won't move it around very much. Maybe with winter coming up, I'll move it out of the way a little bit so my wife can easily get her car in here. But for the most part, this thing is the centerpiece of the shop, and I've got projects being glued up, assembled, cut, whatever, all the time. It looked really nice for the first couple days. After that, we've already added some gouges, some wood glue, scuffs, scratches, scrapes, paint, whatever. Like I always say, build it to use it. If you guys have any suggestions for other modifications that you think would be helpful or be good improvements to this bench, I would really appreciate it. Please leave a comment below. I feel like a vise, maybe 2 vices, would be kind of the final touches on this thing. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Then look up. See the screen up above you? We create more videos, hopefully on a regular basis. That sounds terrible too.
Oh,
What could go wrong?